A simple virgin girl was forced to have a baby with her cold, wealthy CEO, but that baby made him a new man. This is the story of corporate manipulation disguised as opportunity, where a tech billionaire used legal loopholes to control a young woman's most intimate decisions. But what happens when the victim refuses to stay silent, and hidden cameras capture the predator's moment of truth? Have you witnessed how quickly society turns on black women who dare to speak truth to power? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The 19-year-old in turn signed what she thought was a mentorship agreement, until 9 months later, she discovered she'd legally agreed to carry a billionaire's child. Maya clutched the hospital bracelet, her newborn daughter's cries echoing through the sterile room as tabloids called her a scheming gold digger. But the nanny cam footage would expose the truth. Trevor Langford breaking down, whispering to the baby he publicly denied was his. What if your signature on an internship contract stole your body, your choice, and your future? Have you ever trusted someone in power, only to discover they saw you as disposable? Have you witnessed how quickly society turns on black women who dare to speak truth to power? This is the story of corporate manipulation disguised as opportunity, where a tech billionaire used legal loopholes to control a young woman's most intimate decisions. But what happens when the victim refuses to stay silent, and hidden cameras capture the predator's moment of truth? Stay with me as we expose how one signature changed 2 lives forever and sparked a national debate about power, race, and bodily autonomy. Now, let me take you back to where Maya's nightmare began, a university career fair in rural Alabama. She thought opportunity knocked when the billionaire's company offered her an internship. She didn't know she was signing away her womb. The career fair buzzed with nervous energy, harsh lights glaring against cream-colored walls. Maya smoothed her thrift store blazer, the only professional outfit she owned, as she approached the gleaming Technova Solutions booth. Her worn shoes squeaked against polished floors that probably cost more than her entire semester's tuition. Alabama State University's gymnasium had been transformed into corporate heaven. Students in their best clothes, some borrowed, some bought with money they didn't have, moved between booths like moths drawn to flames of possibility. Maya's palms sweated as she clutched her resume, printed on the cheapest paper Walmart sold. She'd been studying computer science for 3 years, working double shifts at the campus dining hall just to keep her lights on. Her grades were perfect, her determination fierce, but her bank account was empty. The internship fair represented her only shot at breaking free from the cycle of poverty that had trapped her family for generations. Technova's booth stood out like a diamond in a coal mine. Everything gleamed: the banner, the brochures, even the smiles of the recruiters in their expensive suits. Maya had researched the company obsessively. Trevor Langford, the CEO, had built an empire worth billions. His face graced magazine covers, his quotes filled business journals. His success story inspired countless young entrepreneurs. Maya Williams? The recruiter's voice was smooth as silk, his gaze scanning her from head to toe in a way that made her skin crawl. But desperation has a way of making red flags look like welcome mats. Yes, sir. I submitted my application online for the software development internship. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Growing up in rural Alabama had taught her to keep her head down, speak softly, and never assume she belonged in spaces like this. The man, his name tag read James Mitchell, senior recruiter, smiled wider. His teeth were too white, his handshake too firm, his interest too intense for a random college student. Your grades are impressive, Maya. Very impressive. Mr. Langford personally reviewed your application. Heat flooded her cheeks. Trevor Langford had looked at her work? The Trevor Langford knew her name? Really? We'd like to offer you a position immediately. Full salary, housing provided in Austin, complete benefits package. James slid a thick folder across the table. Of course, there are some additional agreements to sign. Company policy. Maya's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Page after page of legal language swam before her eyes. Confidentiality clauses, lifestyle agreements, medical requirements, personal conduct standards. The words blurred together in a maze of legal jargon she couldn't fully understand. This seems extensive, she managed. Top companies require top commitment, James replied smoothly. Mr. Langford believes in knowing his employees completely. It's how he's built such a successful organization. You understand. The salary number made her dizzy. More money in one summer than her mother made in 2 years cleaning houses. Enough to pay off her student loans, help her family, maybe even finish her degree without working 3 jobs. I can take this home to review. I'm afraid the offer expires today, James interrupted. We have other candidates waiting. Mr. Langford specifically requested you, but if you're not interested, the threat hung in the air like smoke. Maya thought about her mother's worried face when the rent was due, about choosing between textbooks and groceries, about watching classmates intern at companies she could only dream about joining. She signed every page without reading the fine print. The pen felt heavy in her hand as she wrote her name over and over, each signature sealing her fate in ways she couldn't imagine. James watched every stroke, his smile growing more satisfied with each document she completed. "Welcome to your future, Maya," he said, collecting the signed papers with obvious pleasure. But his eyes held something she couldn't identify, something that made her stomach twist with unease she couldn't explain. She had no idea she'd just signed away her choice to have one. Have you ever been so desperate for an opportunity that red flags looked like green lights? Comment below if you've experienced that moment when desperation clouded judgment. The glass towers of Austin should have felt like freedom. Instead, they became the walls of her cage. The Technova Tower pierced the Texas sky like a glass needle, its reflective surface hiding secrets Maya couldn't yet imagine. Inside, marble floors echoed her uncertain footsteps as she navigated the lobby with wide eyes and a pounding heart. Everything gleamed with wealth she'd never experienced. Crystal chandeliers, leather furniture that probably cost more than her car, and security guards who looked like they belonged in the Secret Service. Maya's company-provided apartment was another shock to her system. The luxury felt foreign, almost offensive, when she thought about her mother's cramped trailer back in Alabama. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of downtown Austin that should have thrilled her. Instead, they made her feel exposed, watched, like she was living in a fishbowl for someone else's entertainment. The refrigerator was stocked with organic foods she'd never heard of. The closet contained professional clothes in her exact size, expensive brands with tags she'd only seen in magazines. Even the toiletries were high-end, everything chosen specifically for her. It felt thoughtful and creepy at the same time. On her first morning, Maya arrived at Technova 30 minutes early, dressed in one of the mysterious pre-selected outfits. The corporate environment overwhelmed her senses. The smell of expensive coffee, the sound of keyboards clicking like rainfall, the sight of employees who looked like they'd stepped out of recruitment brochures. The orientation room filled with other interns, all of them polished and confident in ways that made Maya feel like she was wearing a costume. They talked about prep schools she'd never heard of, spring break trips that cost more than her yearly income, and internships they'd turned down like they were choosing between flavors of ice cream. Then Trevor Langford walked in, and the room fell silent. Maya had seen his photos online, but they hadn't captured his presence. He commanded attention without trying, his expensive suit fitting perfectly, his dark hair slightly mussed in a way that probably took his stylist an hour to achieve. When his eyes swept the room and landed on her, Maya felt like he could see through her skin to her thoughts. "Welcome to Technova." His voice carried easily through the room without a microphone. "You've been selected not just for your technical skills, but for your potential to contribute to something bigger than yourselves." His gaze kept returning to Maya throughout his speech, lingering in ways that made her cheeks burn and her pulse race. She told herself she was imagining things, that successful men looked at everyone with that same intense focus. But when he mentioned special mentorship opportunities for exceptional candidates, his eyes were locked on hers. After orientation, Maya was directed to the medical wing for her mandatory health screening. The company doctor, an older woman with kind eyes but clinical detachment, ran tests that seemed excessive for an internship, blood work, hormone levels, fertility assessments that made Maya uncomfortable. Is all this really necessary? Maya asked as the nurse drew yet another vial of blood. Company policy, the doctor replied with a practiced smile. Mr. Langford believes in comprehensive health monitoring for all employees. These vitamins will help optimize your performance. She handed Maya a bottle of expensive-looking supplements. Take one daily. Don't skip doses. The formula is specifically calibrated for your body chemistry. The pills were larger than normal vitamins, with an odd coating that left a metallic taste in Maya's mouth. But when the company doctor assured her they were perfectly safe, Maya didn't question it. She should have. Have you ever felt that chill when someone looks at you like they're making calculations? When you're not sure if you're seen as a person or a project? Share your experience. He called their private meetings mentorship sessions, but his hands lingered too long, his questions cut too deep. His office occupied the entire top floor, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of Austin that felt like ownership. Maya sat across from his desk, feeling small despite the expansive space. The furniture was all sharp angles and expensive leather, designed to impress rather than comfort. Art that probably cost more than most people's houses hung on walls that seemed to stretch forever. Trevor had been calling her up here every few days, always with business reasons that sounded important. Her code review, her project assignments, her integration into company culture. But the conversations always drifted into territory that made her squirm in the leather chair that probably cost more than her mother's monthly rent. "You're different from the other interns," Trevor said, leaning back his chair with the casual confidence of a man who owned everything in sight. "Tell me about your family." Maya shifted uncomfortably. "There's not much to tell, sir. Just me and my mama back in Alabama. No father." The question stung like it always did. "He left when I was 5. Trevor's expression softened in a way that felt calculated. "That must have been difficult, growing up without a strong male presence in your life." He crept up Maya's neck. "My mama was strong enough for both parents." "I'm sure she was. But there are things a mother can't teach a daughter about the world. About how men think. About power dynamics." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "About what it means to be a woman in spaces like this." Maya's hands twisted in her lap. These conversations always left her feeling like she was walking through a minefield, never sure which step would trigger an explosion. "Have you ever had a boyfriend, Maya?" The question hit her like cold water. "That's personal." Trevor's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Everything about you is my business now. You signed agreements that give me considerable insight into your personal life. For your own protection, of course." "I don't understand." "The corporate world is dangerous for young women, especially beautiful young women from backgrounds like yours." He stood up, moving around the desk with predatory grace. "Men will try to take advantage of your innocence, your lack of experience. I need to know what I'm working with." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as he perched on the edge of his desk, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. "You didn't answer my question." "No," she whispered. I've been focused on my studies." Something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, hunger, triumph. "Good. That kind of focus will serve you well here. But also makes you vulnerable, inexperienced, naive about how the world really works." His hand reached out, ostensibly to straighten a piece of her hair, but his fingers grazed her cheek in a way that felt deliberate. Maya froze, every instinct screaming at her to move away, but the expensive chair seemed to hold her captive. "There are things you'll need to learn, Maya. About business, about relationships, about what's expected of exceptional employees." His thumb traced along her jawline. "I can teach you those things, but it requires trust, complete trust." Maya's mouth went dry. "Mr. Langford." "Trevor," he corrected. "We're going to be working very closely together. Formality creates barriers, and we can't afford barriers in the kind of relationship we're building." "What kind of relationship?" The words came out smaller than she intended. His smile was wolf-like. "The kind that changes lives, Maya. The kind that opens doors you didn't even know existed." but it requires dedication, commitment, the willingness to do whatever it takes to succeed. The vitamin bottle on his desk caught her eye, the same brand the company doctor had given her. Trevor followed her gaze and picked up the bottle, shaking it gently. "You've been taking these, haven't you? Good. They're specially formulated to enhance performance. Physical performance, mental acuity, overall health optimization." He set the bottle down with a soft click. "Very important for what we have planned." Maya's skin crawled, but she couldn't pinpoint why. Nothing he'd said was explicitly inappropriate. Nothing she could report to HR without sounding paranoid. But every instinct inherited from generations of women who'd learned to recognize danger was screaming at her to run. "I should get back to work," she managed. "Of course." Trevor returned to his chair, suddenly all business again. "But Maya, our conversations stay between us." Complete confidentiality is essential in mentoring relationships. You understand. It wasn't a question. When has someone used their power to make you feel special while making you uncomfortable? How do you recognize manipulation disguised as mentorship? Tell me in the comments. The pregnancy test showed 2 lines, but Maya hadn't been with anyone. That's when she discovered what she'd really signed. The legal conference room felt like a tribunal, lawyers in expensive suits surrounding her like vultures. The contract pages spread before her like evidence of her own naivety. Maya's hands shook as she stared at the pregnancy test results the company doctor had just delivered, her mind reeling with impossibility. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the air conditioning's hum. "This can't be right." Trevor sat at the head of the table, his expression a mask of cold satisfaction. Gone was any pretense of the caring mentor he'd played for weeks. In his place sat a stranger, calculating, ruthless, completely in control. "The test is accurate," he said simply. "Congratulations, Maya. You're carrying my child." The words hit her like physical blows. "That's impossible. We've never, haven't we?" Trevor's smile was cruel. Those private mentoring sessions, the special vitamins, the company-sponsored medical appointments. You signed consent forms for everything, Maya. Every single thing. One of the lawyers, a sharp-faced woman with dead eyes, slid a document across the table. "Page 47 of your employment agreement. Subsection 12. You agreed to participate in our executive family planning program as part of your compensation package." Maya's vision blurred as she tried to read the dense legal language. Words swam together. Reproductive services, genetic contribution, gestational obligations, all buried in clauses about health insurance and performance bonuses. "This is insane," Maya breathed. People can't just do this." "We can, and we did," Trevor replied with casual cruelty. "Everything was legal. Everything was consensual. You signed the agreements willingly, after being given ample time to review them." "I didn't know. Ignorance isn't our problem." The lawyer's voice cut like ice. "You signed a binding contract. You accepted compensation. You received medical care specifically designed to optimize your reproductive health for this purpose." Maya's mind raced back through the past month. The strange medical tests, the vitamins that made her feel drowsy, the private meetings where Trevor always offered her special drinks that tasted odd. The pieces fell into place like a nightmare coming into focus. "You drugged me," she said, horror creeping into her voice. "We provided fertility treatments," Trevor corrected, "all clearly outlined in the medical consent forms you signed. Your body responded exactly as intended." Maya's stomach lurched. "I never consented to this." "Not really," not knowing what it meant. "The law disagrees," another lawyer interjected. "You're an adult. You signed legal documents. The courts will uphold our agreements completely." Trevor leaned forward, his eyes glittering with triumph. "You're carrying my child now, Maya. My heir. And according to our very thorough legal agreement, that makes you mine until delivery. Possibly longer, depending on your cooperation." "This is human trafficking," Maya said, finding her voice despite her terror. "This is rape. This is business," Trevor replied coldly. "I lost my wife 3 years ago. Cancer. She died before we could have children. I need an heir, but I refuse to remarry out of sentiment." This arrangement suits my needs perfectly." Maya touched her still flat stomach, feeling trapped by the life growing inside her that she'd never chosen to create. "What about my needs? My choices? My life? Your life is whatever I decide it is." Trevor's mask slipped completely, revealing the monster underneath. "You want an opportunity, Maya? Congratulations. You're about to give birth to the most important opportunity of my generation. My child will inherit billions. You should feel honored to be the vessel." "I'm not a vessel," Maya said, anger finally overriding her shock. "I'm a human being. You're an employee," Trevor corrected. "A very well-compensated employee with a very specific job to do. And you're going to do it exactly as contracted, or you'll face legal consequences that will destroy not just your future, but your family's future as well." The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Maya thought of her mother, working herself to death cleaning rich people's houses. Thought of the mountain of debt that would bury them both if she fought this and lost. "The media would destroy you if this came out," she said desperately. Trevor laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. "The media will destroy you, Maya. A poor black girl from Alabama who seduced a grieving billionaire and tried to trap him with pregnancy? They'll paint you as everything wrong with your generation." Maya's blood ran cold as she realized he was right. Who would believe her story over his? Who would take the word of a broke college student against one of America's most successful CEOs? "You're carrying my child now," Trevor repeated, his voice soft with false intimacy. "And according to our agreement, that makes you mine until delivery. Maybe longer if you're smart." Maya touched her stomach again, feeling like a prisoner in her own body. The baby inside her, his baby, was both her greatest nightmare and her only leverage. She just had to figure out how to use it. What would you do if you discovered your trust had been weaponized against you? When legal documents became chains you never saw being forged? Share thoughts. When her story leaked, America didn't rally to save her. They painted her as the villain who seduced a grieving billionaire. The news vans lined the street outside her corporate housing like mechanical predators. Cameras pointed at her windows like weapons ready to fire. Maya pulled the curtains closed, but she could still hear them. Reporters shouting questions, producers coordinating shots, the constant hum of a media machine that had decided she was the story of the week. She'd made the mistake of confiding in another in turn, a girl named Jessica who seemed sympathetic until Maya realized Jessica's father worked in corporate communications. Within hours of Maya's tearful confession, her story had leaked to every major news outlet in the country. But it wasn't her story anymore. "Intern's pregnancy, scandal rocks, tech giant," read the CNN Sheeran as Maya watched in horror from her living room. The reporter, a polished woman with perfect teeth and judgmental eyes, delivered the news like she was discussing the weather. Sources close to Technova CEO Trevor Langford confirm that a 19-year-old intern has claimed he's the father of her unborn child. Maya Williams, a computer science student from Alabama State University, allegedly pursued the grieving billionaire during her internship, exploiting his vulnerability following his wife's death 3 years ago. Maya's hand shook as she grabbed her phone, scrolling through Twitter hashtags that made her stomach turn. Hashtag gold digger. Hashtag scheming intern. Hashtag poor girl rich man. Hashtag Alabama scheme. The comments were worse than the headlines. Another ghetto girl trying to trap a rich white man. She knew exactly what she was doing. These people always do. Probably got pregnant on purpose. Now she'll get millions. Her phone buzzed constantly. Reporters, producers, lawyers, strangers who'd somehow gotten her number. Maya turned it off, but the silence felt worse than the chaos. On Fox News, a panel of experts dissected her life like she was a lab specimen. They showed her high school yearbook photo, her mother's trailer, her academic records. Everything private had become public property. "This young woman saw an opportunity, and she took it," said a blonde commentator with cold eyes. Trevor Langford is worth $12 billion. He's grieving, he's vulnerable, and she positioned herself perfectly to take advantage of his emotional state. The moderator nodded sagely. "The question is whether this was calculated from the beginning. Did she seek out this internship specifically to target him? Maya screamed at the television, but her voice couldn't reach through the screen to tell them the truth. That she'd never even met Trevor before the internship. That she'd been drugged and manipulated. That she'd signed papers she didn't understand because she was desperate for a chance at a better life. But Trevor's PR team had crafted a different narrative, and it was spreading like wildfire. Her mother called from Alabama, crying, "Baby, what's happening? People are saying terrible things. The news trucks are outside my work, bothering my boss." Maya's heart broke, hearing her mother's confusion and pain. "It's not true, Mama. None of it's true. He did this to me. He tricked me." "Then why are they saying you chased after him? Why are they calling you names I won't repeat?" Maya had no answer that wouldn't sound insane. How could she explain contracts hidden in internship papers? Medical procedures disguised as routine checkups? Drug drinks served with mentorship advice? TMZ ran a segment showing her apartment building, her car, her mother's trailer. They calculated the cost difference between her old life and her current one, implying that money had been her motivation all along. "Look at this upgrade," the host said with a smirk. "From Alabama poverty to Austin luxury. All it took was getting pregnant by the right billionaire." Pretty smart move, if you ask me. Social media exploded with memes mocking her appearance, her background, her presumed motivations. Maya's face became a symbol of everything people hated about women who dared to exist in the same space as powerful men. The racial undertones were impossible to ignore. Every comment section filled with coded language about certain types of women and what they're really after. Maya had become the face of every stereotype about black women that white America was comfortable expressing. Trevor, meanwhile, remained above the fray. His representatives issued carefully worded statements about personal matters and privacy concerns. He appeared at corporate events looking appropriately troubled but dignified, playing the part of a good man caught in circumstances beyond his control. When reporters asked him directly about the pregnancy, his response was perfectly calibrated. "I have great respect for all my interns and employees. Any personal matters will be handled through appropriate legal channels." It was a masterclass in public relations. He never denied the pregnancy, never confirmed it, never said anything that could be proven false later. He simply let the media destroy Maya while he maintained his reputation as a victim of her alleged scheming. Maya's grades suffered as she tried to focus on schoolwork while living under constant scrutiny. She couldn't go to the grocery store without being recognized, couldn't check her email without finding death threats mixed in with interview requests. The corporate apartment that had once felt like a prison now felt like a bunker. Maya rarely left, ordering everything online, watching her life get destroyed in real time on cable news. But something was growing inside her, and it wasn't just the baby she'd never asked for. It was anger. Pure, clean, righteous anger at a system that protected men like Trevor while destroying women like her. As another news report called her a scheming intern, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't going to hide anymore. She wasn't going to let them control the narrative. She was going to fight back. Have you seen how quickly society turns on black women who challenge powerful white men? How often do we blame the victim when she refuses to stay silent? Comment your observations. They expected her to disappear in shame. Instead, she stepped into the spotlight and told her truth. The morning after the third news report called her a scheming intern, Maya sat in her tiny corporate apartment, staring at her phone. 17 missed calls from reporters. 43 text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the comments on social media. Gold digger. Welfare queen trying to trap a rich man. Typical black girl behavior. Each word cut deeper than the last. But something inside Maya's chest hardened with each cruel comment. They wanted her to hide? They wanted her to be ashamed? Fine. She'd give them something to really talk about. Maya called the one reporter who'd sounded different from the rest. Jennifer Walsh from Channel 8 News had asked questions about the contract instead of just assuming Maya was lying. When Jennifer answered, Maya's voice was steady. "I want to tell my story. All of it. But I have conditions." 3 hours later, Maya sat under studio lights that felt like fire against her skin. The makeup artist had covered the dark circles under her eyes, but nothing could hide the steel in her voice as she faced the cameras. Good evening, I'm Jennifer Walsh, and tonight we have an exclusive interview with Maya Johnson, the young woman at the center of the Technova surrogacy controversy. Maya's heart hammered, but she kept her back straight. She thought about Hope, probably sleeping peacefully in the corporate nursery where court orders said she had to stay. Her daughter deserved a mother who fought back. Maya, tell us what really happened. I was 19 years old, fresh out of my sophomore year at Alabama State. I'd never been further than Birmingham in my entire life. Maya's voice grew stronger with each word. When Technova came to our career fair, I thought it was a miracle. A tech internship in Austin, full housing, medical benefits. It felt like winning the lottery. Jennifer leaned forward. When did you first realize something was wrong? Maya's jaw tightened. When I woke up pregnant and couldn't remember how it happened. When Trevor Langford looked me in the eye and told me I'd signed away my right to choose what happens to my own body. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Maya could practically hear Trevor's phone ringing in his glass tower, could picture his lawyers scrambling to control the damage. Good, let them scramble. The documents I signed were 87 pages long. I was told they were standard internship paperwork, health waivers, housing agreements, non-disclosure forms. Maya's voice turned bitter. Page 43, buried in legal language about biological contributions to company research, was my consent to carry Trevor Langford's child. I was 19. I'd never even been kissed, and I signed away my body without knowing it. Jennifer's eyes widened. Are you saying you were drugged? I'm saying I have medical records showing fertility treatments I never agreed to. I'm saying I have vitamin bottles from the company doctor that contain hormones. I'm saying Trevor Langford used his money and power to turn me into a walking incubator. And when I found out, he told me I had no choice but to comply. The studio fell silent except for the hum of cameras. Maya could feel the weight of thousands of people watching, judging, deciding if they believed her. She thought about every woman who'd ever been told she was lying. Every black woman who'd been called dramatic or manipulative for speaking her truth. But here's what Trevor Langford didn't count on, Maya continued, her voice rising with conviction. I come from a long line of black women who don't break easy. My grandmother picked cotton until her fingers bled. My mother cleaned houses for families who wouldn't let her use their bathrooms. And me? I gave birth to his daughter while he hid behind lawyers and PR teams. Maya leaned closer to the camera, speaking directly to the lens like she was talking to every person in America. You want to call me a gold digger? Show me the gold. You want to say I'm scheming? Point to the scheme. I was a virgin before his company drugged me. I had never been on a date, never held hands with a boy, never even thought about having children. But Trevor Langford decided my body belonged to him, and he took what he wanted. Her voice cracked for the first time, but she pushed through. My daughter Hope is 5 months old now. Beautiful, healthy, perfect, and her father has never held her. Never changed her diaper, never sung her to sleep. Because acknowledging her means acknowledging what he did to me, and men like Trevor Langford don't admit to being predators. They just buy better lawyers. Jennifer sat back, clearly moved. What do you want people to know? Maya's smile was sharp as a blade. I want them to know that power doesn't make you untouchable. Money doesn't make you right. And a young black woman from Alabama can bring down a billionaire if she refuses to stay silent. The interview ended, but Maya's phone was already buzzing with messages. Her social media notifications were exploding. But for the first time in months, she wasn't scared of the noise. 2 hours later, Trevor was on a conference call with his legal team, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Find something, he told them, pacing his office like a caged animal. Find anything we can use to destroy her credibility. I don't care what it costs. What Trevor didn't know was that Maya had been recording every phone conversation, every meeting, every threat his team had made since the day she discovered the truth about her pregnancy. And tomorrow, she planned to release them all. Have you ever watched someone refuse to be silenced? When truth becomes more powerful than money. Share stories of people who inspired you to speak up. She gave birth alone, surrounded by nurses who saw her as a paycheck and lawyers who saw her as a vessel. The contraction started at 3 in the morning. Sharp and relentless like Maya's body was finally rebelling against months of being controlled. She sat on the edge of her hospital bed, timing each wave of pain while lawyers shuffled paperwork outside her door. "Ms. Johnson, we need you to sign these custody transfer documents," said the woman in the expensive suit who'd been hovering around the maternity ward for 2 days. "Mr. Langford's legal team requires. Get out." Maya's voice was raw from hours of labor, but it carried a strength that made the lawyer step back. "Get out now, or I swear I'll make sure every news station in Texas knows you tried to steal custody papers from a woman in active labor." The lawyer left, but Maya knew she'd be back. They always came back. Dr. Morrison, the only person in the hospital who seemed to see Maya as human instead of a legal problem, checked her progress with gentle hands. "You're at 8 centimeters, sweetheart. Your baby's coming soon." Maya gripped the bed rails as another contraction hit. Through the haze of pain, she wondered if Trevor was somewhere in his glass tower, knowing his daughter was about to be born. If he cared, if he was scared. She hated that part of her still wondered. "Is anyone coming?" Dr. Morrison asked carefully. "Family? Friends?" Maya shook her head. Her parents back in Alabama couldn't afford the trip to Austin, and Trevor's legal team had made it clear that anyone who supported Maya would be considered hostile witnesses in the custody battle. She was alone by design, just the way Trevor wanted it. But as the final contractions began, Maya made herself a promise. This baby, her daughter, would never feel as isolated as Maya did right now. Whatever it cost, however long it took, Hope would know she was wanted. "Here she comes," Dr. Morrison said, and suddenly Maya was pushing with everything she had, pouring months of anger and fear and love into bringing her daughter into the world. Hope Johnson Langford entered the world at 4:47 a.m., screaming with the fury of someone who knew she'd been fought over before she'd even drawn breath. Dr. Morrison placed her on Maya's chest, and for 17 perfect minutes, nothing else existed. "She's perfect," Maya whispered, counting tiny fingers and toes, memorizing the curve of Hope's ear and the way her dark hair curled against her scalp. "You're perfect, baby girl." Hope's eyes opened, bright and alert, and Maya felt something crack open in her chest. This was love. Pure, fierce, protective love that made every sacrifice worth it. Then the lawyers returned. "Ms. Johnson, according to the custody agreement in your contract, 17 minutes. Maya's voice broke as the nurse reached for Hope. "I get 17 minutes, and then you take her away to strangers who will raise her like she's a business transaction instead of a miracle." The nurse, an older black woman named Patricia, hesitated. Her eyes met Maya's with understanding that crossed every professional boundary. "The baby needs to be assessed," Patricia said carefully. "Standard procedure. Takes about an hour." Maya understood. Patricia was buying her time. "Thank you," Maya whispered as Patricia carefully lifted Hope from her arms. Alone again, Maya stared at the ceiling tiles and listened to the sounds of the hospital around her. Other new mothers laughing with their families. Fathers crying with joy in hallways. Normal people having normal moments while Maya's daughter was being processed like paperwork. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations. She's beautiful. T." Maya stared at the message, rage building in her chest like pressure in a volcano. He was watching somehow. Probably had people at the hospital reporting to him, keeping tabs on his investment while staying far enough away to maintain his public image. She typed back, "Go to hell." The response came immediately. "I know you hate me, but she's mine too." Maya's fingers flew across the screen. "You don't get to claim her now. You denied she existed. You call me a liar on national television. You don't get to be a father from a distance when you couldn't be a man up close." The phone went silent. An hour later, Patricia returned with Hope wrapped in a pink blanket that made her look impossibly small. "She's healthy," Patricia said, placing Hope back in Maya's arms. "Perfect scores on everything. Strong lungs, strong heart. Takes after her mama." Maya looked up at Patricia with tears in her eyes. "How long do I have? Legally? Until the morning." "But honey," Laws change when public opinion changes. And after that interview you gave, public opinion is changing fast. Hope made a tiny sound, and Maya touched her daughter's cheek with one finger. Did you hear that, baby girl? Mama's going to fight for you, and I don't lose fights I care about. As they took Hope away for the final time that day, Maya whispered a promise that would haunt Trevor's dreams for months to come. I will get you back, baby girl. Mama will never stop fighting for you. The words echoed in the empty hospital room long after the lawyers had filed their paperwork and the nurses had changed shifts. Somewhere in Austin, Trevor Langford sat in his penthouse, staring at a photo his security team had taken of Maya holding Hope, and wondered why victory felt so much like loss. What does it mean when the most intimate human experience becomes a legal transaction? When motherhood is reduced to a contract? Share your thoughts on bodily autonomy. Trevor installed cameras to watch the nanny. He never expected them to capture his soul breaking. 3 weeks after Hope's birth, Trevor Langford's penthouse looked like a high-tech nursery had exploded inside a modern art museum. Cameras hidden in stuffed animals, motion sensors in the walls, audio equipment that could pick up a whisper from across the room. Sir, the surveillance system is fully operational. His head of security, Marcus Chun, reported as he finished installing the final camera in a decorative lamp. Every angle of the nursery is covered. We'll have complete oversight of the nanny's activities. Trevor nodded, standing in the doorway of what used to be his home office, now converted into Hope's room. Soft yellow walls replaced stark white ones. A mobile of dancing elephants hung where his awards used to be displayed. The transformation felt like surrendering territory to an enemy he wasn't sure he wanted to defeat. Good. I want reports every 4 hours. Any concerns, any irregularities, call me immediately. Marcus hesitated. Sir, if you don't mind me asking, why not just hire a live-in nanny? Someone you can supervise directly? Trevor's jaw tightened, because supervising Hope meant looking at her. And looking at her meant seeing Maya's eyes staring back at him, wide and accusing. It meant remembering the sound Maya had made when they'd taken Hope from her arms at the hospital. It meant facing what he'd become. The current arrangement is adequate, Trevor said, turning away from the nursery. Just monitor the feeds. But late that night, after his lawyers had gone home and his assistants had stopped calling, Trevor found himself staring at the surveillance monitors in his home office. Hope slept in her crib, tiny chest rising and falling with perfect rhythm. The night nanny, a kind woman named Rose, hummed softly while folding laundry. Trevor reached for the volume control, then stopped. What was he doing? Watching his daughter sleep like some kind of stalker? He'd hired Rose precisely so he wouldn't have to deal with Hope directly. The baby was fed, changed, safe. That was enough. That had to be enough. But he didn't turn off the monitors. Days blended into nights as Trevor found himself checking the feeds obsessively. Hope's first smile, directed at Rose during a diaper change. Her tiny fingers wrapping around Rose's thumb. The way she turned her head toward voices, already learning to recognize the people who cared for her. People who weren't him. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning when Rose called in sick with the flu. Trevor's assistant scrambled to find a replacement, but the backup nannies were all booked. For 4 hours, until the temp agency could send someone, Hope would be alone in the nursery with only the cameras watching. Trevor sat in his office, staring at the monitors as Hope began to fuss in her crib. Her tiny cries echoed through the speakers, growing more distressed by the minute. He called his assistant. Where's the replacement nanny? Still 40 minutes out, sir. Traffic's backed up from an accident on. Trevor hung up. 40 minutes. Hope's cries were getting louder, more desperate. She was hungry, or needed changing, or just wanted to be held. Basic human needs that money couldn't fulfill through a camera lens. His feet moved toward the nursery before his brain caught up. Hope was red-faced and screaming when he entered the room. Her tiny fists waved in the air like she was fighting invisible demons. Trevor stood frozen in the doorway, suddenly realizing he'd never been alone with his daughter before. Never held her, never changed her diaper, never done any of the things fathers were supposed to do. Hey, he said awkwardly, approaching the crib like it might explode. Hey, it's okay. Someone's coming. Hope's cries softened slightly at the sound of his voice. Her unfocused eyes turned toward him, searching for the source of the new sound. Trevor's hands shook as he reached into the crib. Hope was smaller than he'd expected, lighter than the legal briefs he carried every day, but somehow infinitely more substantial. She fit against his chest like she belonged there, her crying stopping the moment she felt human contact. "There we go," Trevor whispered, his voice breaking on the words. "That's better, isn't it?" Hope made a soft sound. Not quite a coo, but close enough to make Trevor's chest ache. She smelled like baby powder and innocence, two things he'd forgotten existed. Her tiny hand found his finger and gripped it with surprising strength. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words coming from somewhere deep and broken inside him. "I'm so sorry, Hope. You deserved better than this. Better than me." Hope's eyes drifted closed as she settled against his shoulder, trusting him completely despite everything he'd done to earn her existence. Trevor sank into the rocking chair Rose used for feedings, afraid to move and break the spell. "Your mother," he said quietly, "your mother is stronger than I ever was, braver than I'll ever be. She fought for you from the moment she knew you existed. And I hid behind lawyers and contracts in fear." Hope's breathing evened out against his chest, each exhale a tiny puff of warmth against his neck. "I don't know how to be your father," Trevor admitted to the sleeping baby. "I don't know how to undo what I did. But maybe I can figure out how to deserve you. Both of you." For 17 minutes, the same amount of time Maya had been allowed to hold Hope after birth, Trevor sat in that rocking chair, holding his daughter and letting himself feel the weight of everything he'd destroyed to create her. The replacement nanny found them like that, and Trevor quickly handed Hope over, his professional mask sliding back into place. But the cameras had recorded everything. Every whispered apology, every gentle touch, every tear that fell on Hope's face as her father finally let his walls crumble. Marcus Chun discovered the footage during his routine review of the security feeds. He sat in the surveillance room, watching his boss transform from corporate shark to broken man in the space of 17 minutes, and knew his world was about to change. The question was, what would he do with the truth? Have you ever seen someone's public mask completely fall away, when their private truth was the opposite of their public lie? Tell me about authenticity versus performance. 24 hours after the video leaked, Trevor Langford became the most hated man in America and the most human. Marcus Chun sat in his car outside Maya's corporate housing complex at 6 a.m., a flash drive burning a hole in his pocket like evidence of a crime he hadn't committed but couldn't ignore. The security footage from Trevor's nursery played in his head on repeat. 17 minutes of a powerful man reduced to whispered confessions to the daughter he'd publicly denied. Maya emerged from the building right on schedule, heading to her part-time job at a downtown coffee shop. The media circus had died down slightly since her explosive interview, but photographers still lurked around corners, waiting for the next piece of the story. Marcus approached carefully, keeping his hands visible. Maya tensed when she saw him coming, probably assuming he was another reporter or private investigator sent to dig up dirt. "Ms. Johnson, my name is Marcus Chun. I work security for Trevor Langford." Maya's eyes hardened. "If you're here to threaten me or try to buy my silence." "I'm here to give you something," Marcus interrupted, pulling out the flash drive. "Something that changes everything." Maya stared at the small device like it might bite her. "What is it?" "The truth. About how Trevor really feels about Hope. About you. About what he's been hiding from everyone, including himself." 20 minutes later, Maya sat in the coffee shop's back office, watching security footage on Marcus's laptop while her manager covered her morning shift. The timestamp showed yesterday morning, 9:43 a.m. Trevor's penthouse nursery came into view, and Maya's breath caught as she watched him enter the room where Hope was crying. "He never holds her," Maya whispered, leaning closer to the screen. "His lawyers told the court he's an active, involved father, but I knew they were lying." "Keep watching," Marcus said quietly. Maya watched Trevor approach Hope's crib with obvious fear, watched him pick up their daughter with shaking hands, watched his face crumble as he held her close. But it was his words that hit Maya like a physical blow. "I'm so sorry, Hope. You deserved better than this. Better than me. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. This wasn't the cold, calculating man who'd manipulated her into pregnancy. This was someone broken, someone lost, someone drowning in regret. Your mother is stronger than I ever was, braver than I'll ever be. Tears rolled down Maya's cheeks as she watched Trevor rock their daughter, his walls completely down, his pain laid bare for the cameras he'd forgotten were recording. "Why are you showing me this?" Maya asked when the footage ended. Marcus closed the laptop. Because 17 minutes of honesty shouldn't be buried under years of lies. Because that little girl deserves to know her father is capable of love, even if he's bad at showing it. And because I've watched Trevor Langford make ruthless decisions for 5 years. But yesterday morning, he was just a scared man holding his daughter for the first time. Maya sat back in her chair, mind racing. The footage changed everything and nothing. Trevor had still manipulated her, still stolen her choice, still denied hope publicly, but also showed a side of him she'd never seen. Vulnerable, regretful, human. "What do you want me to do with this?" Marcus shrugged. "That's up to you." But the world has painted him as a monster. Maybe they should see that monsters can feel remorse. Maybe that's how healing starts. That afternoon, Maya uploaded the video to her social media accounts with a simple caption. "This is Trevor Langford yesterday morning, alone with our daughter Hope for the first time. Make of it what you will." The video exploded across the internet like wildfire. Hashtag Hope and Trevor trended within hours. Hashtag 17 minutes became a rallying cry for people debating forgiveness versus accountability. The video was shared over 2 million times in the first day, with comments ranging from crocodile tears to broken man trying to heal. Talk show hosts dissected every word. Legal experts debated whether it proved anything about the original case. Twitter split into camps. Hashtag Team Maya, hashtag Team Trevor, and hashtag Team Hope, with the last group arguing that the baby's well-being mattered more than her parents' war. But it was the unexpected voices that carried the most weight. Mothers who'd fought custody battles. Fathers who'd struggled with connection. Survivors of manipulation who recognized both the harm Trevor had caused and the humanity he'd shown in that nursery. "This doesn't erase what he did," wrote one user, "but it shows he knows what he did was wrong." That's where change starts. A man admitting his mistakes to his baby daughter isn't the same as making amends to the woman he hurt, countered another. Trevor watched the video's viral spread from his office, feeling exposed and raw. His lawyers were in crisis mode, trying to control damage that couldn't be controlled. His board was demanding explanations for publicity that made damage control impossible. But for the first time in months, Trevor wasn't focused on the business fallout. He was thinking about Maya watching that video, seeing him at his most vulnerable, hearing him acknowledge her strength while admitting his weakness. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "She's at Children's Medical Center. Room 314. Fever spiked this morning. Thought you should know." Trevor's blood turned to ice. Hope was sick. His daughter, their daughter, was in the hospital, and Maya had told him. Despite everything she told him. He left his office without a word to anyone, his lawyers calling after him as he ran for the elevator. For the first time since Hope's birth, Trevor Langford was going to see his daughter not because lawyers said he could, but because she needed him. And Maya would be there too. What happens when undeniable truth meets unstoppable lies? When hidden cameras capture what powerful people never meant to reveal. Share your thoughts on accountability. They met in a courtroom, but their eyes held a conversation the lawyers couldn't hear. Rage, regret, and recognition of shared responsibility. The children's hospital waiting room felt smaller with their history filling every corner. Months of manipulation, lies, and pain creating invisible walls between them as Trevor rushed through the automatic doors, still wearing his business suit like armor. Maya looked up from the uncomfortable plastic chair where she'd been sitting for 6 hours, watching Hope's fever climb despite the doctor's efforts. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying and lack of sleep, but they still held fire when they met Trevor's. "She's okay," Maya said before he could ask, her voice hoarse. "Ear infection. Common in babies," they said. But her fever hit 103 this morning, and I thought. She didn't finish the sentence, but Trevor understood. She thought she might lose their daughter. Trevor sank into the chair across from her, suddenly looking like he'd aged years since the video leaked. How long have you been here? Since 4 a.m. She was crying differently, you know? Not hungry crying or tired crying. Hurt crying. Maya rubbed her eyes with the back of her hand. The nurses let me hold her while they ran tests. She's sleeping now. They sat in silence. The only sounds the distant hum of medical equipment and hushed conversations from other worried families. Trevor wanted to say something, but every word that came to mind felt inadequate. Sorry didn't cover what he'd done. Thank you didn't express his gratitude that Maya had called him. The video, Maya said finally, not looking at him. Marcus showed it to me yesterday. Trevor's stomach dropped. I didn't know I know. Maya turned to face him, her expression unreadable. You forgot about the cameras, didn't you? When you were holding her. Trevor nodded, shame heating his cheeks. I forgot about everything except her crying. She needed someone and the nanny was sick and You held your daughter for the first time. Yes. Maya studied his face like she was looking for lies, for manipulation, for some angle he was working. But all she saw was exhaustion and fear. The same emotions she'd been carrying since Hope's birth. She stopped crying when you picked her up, Maya said softly. In the video, she recognized your voice. Trevor's eyes filled with tears he couldn't hide. I don't know how to be your father, Maya. I don't know how to undo what I did to get her here. You can't undo it. Maya's voice was sharp, cutting through any hope for easy forgiveness. You stole my choice. You manipulated me, drugged me, used your power to turn my body into a vessel for your grief. That's not something you apologize away with 17 minutes of honesty. Trevor flinched at the brutal truth of her words, but he didn't argue. He couldn't argue with facts. But Maya continued, her voice softening slightly. Hope doesn't care about any of that. She just knows she has a father who's too scared to hold her and a mother who fights for her every day. That's not fair to her. Dr. Martinez approached them with a clipboard and a tired smile. Hope's fever broke an hour ago. The antibiotics are working perfectly. She should be ready to go home tomorrow morning. Both parents stood up, relief flooding their faces. Can we see her? Maya asked. Of course, but she's still sleeping, so try to keep voices low. They walked down the hospital corridor side by side, not touching, but somehow connected by their shared fear and love for the tiny girl in room 314. Hope lay in her hospital crib, looking impossibly small under the monitoring equipment, but her color was better and her breathing was steady. She's perfect, Trevor whispered, his voice breaking slightly. Maya glanced at him, seeing genuine awe and love in his expression. She is, even with everything that happened, even with how she came to be, she's perfect. Trevor reached toward the crib, then stopped, looking at Maya for permission. She nodded, and he gently touched Hope's tiny hand. Their daughter's fingers instinctively wrapped around his thumb, making both parents catch their breath. I want to try, Trevor said quietly, his eyes still on Hope. I want to learn how to be her father. Not the legal father who provides money and stays distant. A real father who shows up. Maya was quiet for so long that Trevor wondered if she'd heard him. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. She deserves that. But Trevor, if you're going to be in her life, you have to be all in. No more hiding behind lawyers and contracts. No more denying she exists when it's convenient. You don't get to be a part-time parent when a mood strikes you. Trevor nodded. I understand. Do you? Because being her father means dealing with me too. It means co-parenting with the woman you manipulated and hurt. It means facing what you did every single day, because I'll never forget and I'll never let you forget. Trevor turned to look at Maya directly, seeing the strength that had carried her through pregnancy, birth, and months of fighting for their daughter. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I don't deserve forgiveness. But Hope deserves a chance to know both her parents. If you let me try, I want to learn how to be the father she needs. Maya looked at their daughter, still sleeping peacefully despite the chaos of the adult world around her. Hope had never asked to be born into this mess, had never chosen to be the center of a legal battle and media circus. She just asked to be loved. 5 minutes, Maya said finally. When she gets out of the hospital, you can visit for 5 minutes at a time. Supervised visits while I'm there. If you can prove you're serious about being her father and not just managing your public image, maybe we can work towards something more. Trevor's relief was visible. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Being Hope's father means earning it every day. It means showing up when it's hard, when it's inconvenient, when there are no cameras recording your good moments. As if she'd heard her parents talking, Hope made a small sound in her sleep, her hand tightening around Trevor's thumb. Both Maya and Trevor looked down at her, and for a moment, the anger and hurt between them faded into something else. Shared love for the little girl who'd changed both their lives forever. She's going to be okay, Maya said, though whether she was talking about Hope's recovery or their complicated future, Trevor wasn't sure. But for the first time since Hope's birth, he allowed himself to hope that maybe, with enough work and patience, they could all be okay. Can someone who used their power to hurt you ever be trusted again? What does accountability look like when damage can't be undone? Share your perspective. The woman who should have been his biggest enemy became his only chance at redemption, and he almost threw it away. Trevor Langford stood outside the daycare center at 6:47 a.m., clutching a coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Through the glass doors, he watched Maya strap Hope in her car seat with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to do everything alone. His daughter, their daughter, giggled at something Maya whispered, and the sound hit him like a physical blow. 6 weeks had passed since the courtroom mediation. 6 weeks since Maya had shocked everyone by agreeing to supervised visits. 6 weeks of Trevor fumbling through diaper changes while Maya watched him like a hawk ready to strike. "You're early again," Maya said as she approached the entrance. She wore scrubs from her new job at the community health clinic, a position she'd taken specifically to help other women who'd been exploited by powerful men. Everything about her radiated competence now, strength that made Trevor feel like the amateur he was at this parenting thing. "I wanted to make sure I didn't miss any time with her," Trevor replied, holding the door open. The gesture felt awkward, loaded with their complicated history. Hope reached for him with pudgy arms, and Trevor's heart did that weird flip it had been doing lately. "Dada," she squealed, the word still new enough to make both adults freeze. Maya's jaw tightened almost invisibly. "She's been saying it all week. I thought you should know." The park playground buzzed with hidden photographers, but Trevor's focus remained on Hope's laughter as Maya pushed her on the swing, a sound that made his chest ache with all the moments he'd already missed. Camera flashes popped from behind trees and benches, but neither parent acknowledged them anymore. "The board wants me to limit our public appearances together," Trevor said quietly, watching Hope's face light up as the swing carried her higher. "Bad for the company image, they say." Maya's hands stilled on the swing. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them my daughter's happiness matters more than stock prices." He paused, then added, "I told them if they had a problem with that, they could find a new CEO." For the first time in months, Maya almost smiled. "You're learning." A photographer stepped too close, camera aimed at Hope's face. Without thinking, both parents moved, Trevor stepping protectively in front of the swing while Maya scooped Hope in her arms. Their bodies formed a shield around their daughter, and for a moment, they moved like a unit. "Daddy stay?" Hope asked, her small hand reaching for Trevor's face. Maya looked at Trevor, really looked at him. 6 months ago, he would have seen that look and calculated how to use it to his advantage. Now he just waited. Have you ever watched someone you had every reason to hate slowly earn your trust back? When has someone's actions finally matched their words after months of empty promises? Drop a comment below if you've seen real change happen in someone who hurt you. "Maybe Daddy can come home with us for dinner," Maya said finally. Just this once. As paparazzi snapped photos of their family moment, Maya made a decision that shocked even herself. "Hope needs stability," she told Trevor as they walked to their cars. "Maybe it's time we gave her a real chance at having both parents." Trust, like love, can't be bought, but it can be earned one honest moment at a time. 3 months later, Trevor's penthouse looked nothing like the cold showpiece it had been. Colorful blocks scattered across Italian marble floors, Children's books sat stacked on glass coffee tables, worth more than most people's cars. A high chair occupied space beside the dining table that had once hosted board meetings. "She's asleep," Maya whispered, emerging from what had become Hope's room during their weekend visits. Trevor had cleared out his home office without being asked, spending his own money to paint walls soft yellow and install safety locks on every cabinet. Maya found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, washing bottles by hand instead of putting them in the dishwasher. 6 months ago, she would have seen this as performance, another manipulation. Now, she recognized the quiet concentration of a man learning to care for his child properly. "You don't have to do that," she said, settling onto one of the bar stools. "I can handle it. I want to learn." Trevor dried his hands on a dish towel that had tiny elephants on it, something he never would have owned before Hope. "I miss too much already." The admission hung between them, honest and raw. Maya studied his profile as he moved around the kitchen. The sharp edges that had once made him look predatory had softened somehow. He moved differently now, like he was carrying something precious. "Dr. Chun says Hope's speech development is ahead of schedule," Maya offered. "She thinks it's because she's hearing so many different voices now." Trevor turned, hope flickering across his features. "Different voices? Your voice. My voice. The daycare teachers." Maya paused, then added quietly, "She's thriving with both of us in her life." They developed routines over the past months. Tuesday dinners at Maya's apartment, where Trevor sat on her secondhand couch and read picture books in voices that made Hope giggle. Weekend mornings at his penthouse, where Maya taught him how to braid tiny ponytails and button tiny shirts. Public outings where they presented a united front against the cameras that still followed them. The foundation board approved the new funding, Trevor said, referring to the organization they'd started together. One focused on helping young women understand their legal rights before signing any contracts. "We can hire 3 more counselors." Maya nodded. They'd learned to work together on this, their shared purpose giving them common ground that didn't involve their complicated past. "Good." The waiting list keeps growing. A soft cry came from Hope's room, followed by "Mama, Dada." They looked at each other, both recognizing their daughter's nightmare voice. Without discussion, they walked to her room together. Hope stood in her crib, tears streaming down her chubby cheeks. She reached for both parents simultaneously, little arms stretching toward each of them. What does healthy co-parenting look like when there's trauma in your history? How do you put a child's needs ahead of your own pain? Tell me in the comments about building trust after betrayal. Trevor and Maya each took one of Hope's hands, and immediately, their daughter's cries stopped. She looked from one parent to the other, then back again, as if confirming they were both real. When Hope took her first steps that night, walking from Maya's arms directly to Trevor's, both parents cried. But it was Maya's whispered words that changed everything. "She deserves better than our anger." The line between co-parents and something more blurred the night Hope got sick, and Maya let Trevor hold them both. The emergency room at Austin Children's Hospital felt like a nightmare at 2 a.m. Hope's fever had spiked to 104 degrees, and she'd been listless and crying for hours. Maya had called Trevor without thinking, her voice shaking as she explained that something was wrong with their baby. He'd arrived in 15 minutes, hair uncombed, wearing pajama pants under his coat. The sight of him, powerful Trevor Langford looking completely undone by fear for his daughter, did something to Maya's carefully guarded heart. "Any word yet?" Trevor asked, settling into the plastic chair beside her. They'd been waiting for 3 hours while doctors ran tests. Maya shook her head, exhaustion making her shoulders sag. "They think it might be an infection, but they're not sure where it's coming from." Hope lay sleeping fitfully in the hospital crib, looking so small against the white sheets. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking her vital signs, each sound a reminder of how fragile she was. "This is my fault," Trevor said quietly. "If I'd been a real father from the beginning." "Don't." Maya's voice cut through his self-blame. "Not now. She needs us focused on getting better, not on what we can't change." Trevor nodded, but his hands were shaking as he reached through the crib bars to stroke Hope's hair. "I've never been this scared in my life." "Welcome to being a parent," Maya said, but her voice was gentle. "The fear never goes away. You just learn to function around it." They sat in silence, watching their daughter breathe. The children's hospital waiting room became their confessional, harsh lights illuminating fears they kept hidden as they waited for test results that would determine their baby's future. Around 4 a.m., Hope woke up crying, and nothing the nurses did could calm her. She reached for both parents, arching her back when anyone else tried to hold her. "She wants you both," the nurse said practically. "Sometimes that's the best medicine." Trevor looked at Maya questioningly. They hadn't shared physical space like this since before everything went wrong. But Hope was crying and Maya was exhausted, and sometimes being parents meant putting your own comfort aside. Maya scooted over in the reclining chair, making room. Trevor settled beside her carefully, and together they held Hope between them. Their daughter immediately relaxed, one tiny hand gripping Trevor's shirt, the other tangled in Maya's curls. The intimacy was overwhelming. Trevor's arm around Maya's shoulders as she leaned into his warmth. The steady rhythm of his breathing against her temple. The way he hummed softly to Hope, the same lullaby Maya had been singing for months. "Maya," Trevor whispered against her hair. "I need you to know, she didn't want words right now. Words had gotten them into trouble before. She just wanted to hold their daughter and feel, for a moment, like they were a real family." Can trauma really transform into trust? When someone who once hurt you becomes someone who comforts you, how do you handle those confusing feelings? Share your thoughts below about forgiveness and second chances. As Hope recovered and they held each other in that hospital chair, Maya and Trevor's hands intertwined over their daughter's sleeping form. "We can't," Maya whispered, even as she didn't pull away. "We shouldn't," he agreed, his thumb tracing her palm. But they both knew should had stopped mattering hours ago. Their private reconciliation became public ammunition. America watched as a love story grew from the ashes of exploitation. The press conference room at the Austin Convention Center filled with tension as Maya and Trevor sat side by side, behind a table covered with microphones. 8 months had passed since the nanny cam video destroyed Trevor's reputation and rebuilt it into something entirely different. Now, they were about to face the media together for the first time as willing partners. "Mr. Langford," a reporter called out, "your company stock has dropped 30% since this scandal broke. Do you regret your relationship with Ms. Johnson?" Trevor's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "I regret every action I took that hurt Maya. I regret the systems I created that allowed exploitation to happen. But I don't regret having Hope in my life, and I don't regret learning what it means to respect the mother of my child." Maya watched him field the hostile questions with something approaching admiration. The man who had once hidden behind lawyers and PR teams now answered every query directly, accepting full responsibility for his actions. "Ms. Johnson," another reporter pressed, "critics say you're being manipulated again, that Mr. Langford is using his wealth to control the narrative. How do you respond?" Maya leaned toward the microphones, her voice clear and confident. "Nobody controls my narrative anymore. I'm here by choice, speaking my own words, making my own decisions. Trevor doesn't get credit for my strength, that was always mine, but he does get credit for learning to respect it." The questions came rapid fire after that, about their foundation work, which had already helped over 200 women understand their legal rights. About Trevor's corporate reforms, including the elimination of all non-disclosure agreements and the creation of an independent board to investigate workplace exploitation. About their personal relationship, which had become a subject of intense public fascination. Are you romantically involved? The question everyone had been waiting for. Maya and Trevor exchanged a glance. They talked about this moment, knowing it would come. Their relationship had evolved slowly, carefully, with counseling and boundaries and constant communication. What had started as co-parenting had grown into something deeper, but they kept it private, protecting both Hope and themselves from public scrutiny. Maya's answer stunned the nation. "We're learning that love isn't about power over someone. It's about power with someone. Yes, we're building something together." But this time, we're doing it as equals. The room exploded with follow-up questions, but Trevor raised his hand for silence. Maya and I have both made mistakes. The difference is I used my power to hurt someone, and she used her courage to survive it. Now we're using our experience to help others. That's what matters. What does redemption look like in the age of social media? Can love grow from trauma? Or does past abuse poison everything it touches? Comment below with your thoughts on second chances and accountability. After the press conference, they walked out into the Austin sunshine together, hope balanced on Trevor's hip. The cameras followed them, but for once, neither parent minded. They had nothing left to hide. So, Trevor said as they reached their cars, "Dinner tonight? All three of us." Maya smiled, the first completely unguarded smile she'd given him since their story began. "All three of us," she agreed. "But I'm cooking. Your kitchen skills still need work." As they drove away in separate cars toward the same destination, both knew they were finally writing their story on their own terms. 2 years after signing a contract that stole her choice, Maya signed another one, this time choosing love on her own terms. The courthouse steps where they'd once battled now witnessed their vows. Maya wore a simple white dress she'd chosen herself, paid for with money she'd earned from her work at the foundation. Trevor stood beside her in a suit that cost less than his usual shoes, a deliberate choice they'd both made about the kind of wedding they wanted. Hope, now 2.5, toddled between them in a yellow dress. Carrying a basket of flower petals, she scattered with serious concentration. "Mama pretty," she announced to the small gathering of friends and family, causing laughter to ripple through the crowd. "We're gathered here today," the judge began, "not to witness a traditional ceremony, but to celebrate a choice freely made by two people who understand the true meaning of consent." Maya had insisted on writing her own vows, words that came from a place of hard-won wisdom rather than romantic fantasy. "Trevor," she said, her voice steady, "you once took my choice away from me. Today I choose to give you my heart. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Not because of contracts or legal obligations, but because you've earned it through your actions, your growth, and your respect for the woman I've become." Trevor's vows were simpler, more direct. "Maya, I can't undo the harm I caused you. I can't give you back the months of fear and anger I put you through. But I can promise you this, for the rest of my life, your choices will be your own. Your voice will be heard. Your strength will be celebrated. And if you ever want to walk away, I'll help you pack." The kiss was gentle, respectful, a stark contrast to every forced intimacy from their past. Hope clapped enthusiastically, not understanding the significance, but sensing the happiness around her. At the reception in Maya's grandmother's backyard, Trevor's corporate friends mixed awkwardly with Maya's family from Alabama. But Hope ran between the groups, her laughter bridging differences that money and background had created. "You know," Maya's mother said, pulling Trevor aside, "I never thought I'd see the day when my daughter would choose to marry the man who hurt her so badly." Trevor nodded, accepting the weight of her words. "I never thought I'd deserve the chance to prove I could change. But you did change," she continued. "And more importantly, you let her change you without trying to change her back. That's the difference between love and control." The Foundation's latest report sat on the gift table beside cards from well-wishers. Statistics showing they'd helped over 1,000 women in 2 years, preventing countless situations like Maya's original exploitation. Their work had become their shared purpose, turning their trauma into something meaningful. So what would you do if someone who once controlled you learned to love you as an equal? If your worst experience led to your greatest purpose? Tell me in the comments what transformation means to you. That night, in their new house, bought together, decided together, Maya and Trevor held each other with the reverence of people who knew the difference between taking and being given. Hope slept peacefully in the next room, dreaming of yellow dresses and flower petals. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about resilience, redemption, and the power of choice. Comment below which moment in Maya and Trevor's journey resonated most with you. And remember, your signature on any document should be your choice, your power, your decision. Never let anyone steal that from you. Outside their window, Austin glittered with possibility, and for the first time in either of their lives, the future felt like something they were writing together.